Hello everyone, we are going to talk about what is research today. But before we talk about what is research, I want to mention why we're taking a class in research method, specifically research method using to study social media. A lot of communication programs across the country require a research method class because this is a program that we really emphasize on social media, so we try to combine these two. And I would say this is the second most important class you will take as part of your major. Of course, as a communication student, it doesn't matter if your major is advertising, PR, or journalism, or even TV and radio. Being a good writer will be your biggest advantage on the job market. But the second most important thing I would say is to know how to do research and read research. It's going to help you to understand public relations campaign and an advertising campaign, or even just any topic you're interested in, because research can provide very useful information. After you take this class, you should be able to understand and critique studies like an expert. You need to know the differences between theory, research question, hypothesis, judge the quality of the sample, quality of the study design. Because when you watch TV news, you can see a lot of people are saying, according to research, according to research. That's actually a very vague statement. It's not always credible, because there are good research and bad research. After taking this class, you should be able to tell what type of research is more trustworthy. And you need to understand what's causation, what's correlation, and why they are different. Causation means something caused something to happen, and correlation basically means two things are related, but if you get rid of one thing, the other thing may not disappear. We will go into detail later in this class, and you also need to understand what is statistical significance, because a lot of research will show you a result, but if the result itself is not significant, which is a scientific criteria we use all the time to judge whether the result is just random or it's really meaningful. And also, this class should help you to get a job. It's very important skills to design a survey or interview or focus group, put a protocol together, and analyze the data in stats program. We're not going to buy an expensive stats program for this class, but you should be able to use Excel, which is paid already by the university, to analyze the data you have. And this is really the skill that sets you apart, because a lot of communication students or students with liberal art background don't necessarily know how to do research. So this could really help you. And there is an article here I listed. There are two classes listed that can really get you more employable. One is stats, one is communication. So good things you're taking both. And I also want to share with you, I honestly believe science is awesome. You shouldn't be afraid at all. You don't need to be good at math to be good at this class, because we don't require any math background above high school. You will know what I mean. You just need to know which button to push. Excel will do all the math for you. And of course, once you know the scientific method, even if you don't use it yourself, you can take advantage of all the awesome science done by scholars. Just read their result and inform your professional or personal decisions in the future. So I hope you really enjoy this class. Now let's talk a little bit about what is research. It's really just attempt to answer a question or make a discovery. Like when you're applying for school, if you know you want to be a communication student, you probably want to do a little bit of research about which school has a better communications department. A lot of people are saying SFA and Sam Houston are kind of comparable in terms of location and the size of the school. Which one is better? You probably want to do a little research, look at their website, their recent graduates, what kind of jobs they are getting, and what are the classes they are offering, and some other fun research questions that you can ask. Even when you're buying a phone or buying some new sneakers, you want to do your research. Those are all attempts to answer a question or make a discovery. But when we're talking about scientific research, we probably will be more strict. But to start with, think about all the research you do in your daily life and what the things you rely on when you make decisions. In every day of life, we have several ways of knowing. We don't necessarily develop a theory, or we don't necessarily come up with a hypothesis. We just know. And why do we know? The first way is tradition. It's always been true. You always eat turkey on Thanksgiving. If you have those existing beliefs, maybe it's you got it from your parents, from your grandparents, or just some family tradition, then you always know that's true. That's the first type of knowing. It's tradition. The second way of knowing is authority, basically. Someone with a doctorate degree or someone you respect a lot tell you what's going on, what you should do, then that's authority. And it's very hard to challenge authority. But I'm sure if you studied any history at any point of your life, you will find out authority can be wrong all the time. So even though it's a very common way of knowing, it's not necessarily reliable. But also it's very hard to change the beliefs that's passed on by authorities. Because even if there's new information contradictory to your belief, you may just disregard the information. It's very important as a young scholar or just as a college student, do not believe in any type of authority lightly. Try to develop your own critical thinking. And just because when it comes to research, just because something has been published doesn't mean it's true. Again, when you hear TV hosts saying, according to research, don't just take that sentence as some kind of claim that it's true, it's trustworthy. It's not. There are a lot of bad research out there, and not all the bad research will get retracted. So really pay attention to the details, and this class should give you the skills to make better judgment. The next way of knowing is intuition or logic, because it seemed to be true. You just feel like it's true. It's based on observations, even though you didn't observe people or phenomena systematically or really take into consideration all factors, but just based on casual observations, people think there are certain principles or such certain way of life that's just true. Like a lot of people think Ivy League students are just rich and spoiled, but if you observe closely, there's so many students that went to Ivy League school without a rich background and they work really hard. So you may have some of this kind of false belief as well. This may be a good time for you to look into the mirror and think about all the things you believe to be true, whether it's from logic, intuition, or whether it's from authority, or whether it's from tradition. The reason we start talking about everyday ways of knowing is because we need to understand we have existing beliefs and knowledge that will affect how we process information. But those beliefs shouldn't be, those beliefs should be challenged as we learn more about a scientific research method. We have to accept new information. We have to be able to improve our information processing procedure and how we process new information. That's so important, mostly because the media environment has changed a lot. And as young people, you must be very familiar with all the new communication technology, all the new ways to access information. You will have more information than your parents for sure, and how you process this information. If you only rely on everyday ways of knowing, like how the older generation have done, you will get lost very quickly. So that's why we really, really need to learn what's the scientific method, what's more rigorous way of processing information. So what is scientific method and why is it better than the everyday ways of knowing? The first, scientific method always open to new information. It's incremental learning. Whatever you learn today is built on what have been found before. And also we have very specific steps to take. The reason we follow those steps is because we want to avoid bias. First, all the scientific method or the research that's done within scientific method should be made available to others to scrutinize. And detailed description of what you did should be published in the paper or in the report before you put it online, so others can replicate your study or find out any mistakes you have made along the way. However, this is not common for private research. If, let's say, a scholar at the University of Houston did some research, he or she will be required to provide all the details about the scientific method. But if Disney hired a scholar to study some films, they are not required to publish everything because it's done by private money. That's why the government spends so much money to fund research, because when knowledge is shared with other people, it will help the society as a whole, and of course help us to do better research in the future. Next, scientific method is supposed to be very objective. We have procedures, rules that must be followed. Let's say if we're doing an experiment on a new drug, we separate people into two groups. One take the placebo, one take the drug. Of course, as the person designed the drug, he or she would want to see that those people receiving the drug get better, faster. But to guarantee that the procedure is objective, we have to use random assignment. Let's say we have 10 patients. We have to randomly assign them into those two groups, placebo group or drug group. Because if we only assign people who is better condition to begin with in the drug group, of course, they will probably recover fast. But that's biased design. One scholars, scientists doing research with the experiment method, there are other methods as well. But when you're using experiment, random assignment is so critical because that's the procedure to guarantee your result is objective, not biased. And of course, all the procedures are put in place so we can be as free of bias as possible. And we know it's impossible to get rid of biases, but we make a very, very strong effort to guarantee that. Also, science has to be empirical. In this class, I will give you a lot of examples that may be offensive or controversial, but keep in mind, I'm not putting things there to upset you. These are just things that's out there. It exists. It's up to you how to make the judgment. But when you're using scientific method, remember you have to focus on the issue, the topic that can be measured, can be tested, not something that you can find valid evidence. In order to be empirical, we have to have definition, have measurement. First, we have conceptual definition, like in a dictionary, what are the concepts being defined, and in order to measure them in the empirical way, we will come up with operational definition to measure it. Let's say grit is a firmness of character. That's what the dictionary says, and that's what people generally believe. But when we measure it, when we ask people, do you agree or disagree with the statement that setbacks don't discourage me? And then people will evaluate how much this statement describes them. That's the operational definition. Using measurement, we will measure all those concepts in an empirical way. So different people will give you different results, and then they will be really comparable because we're using the same scale to measure everyone. Also, scientific research has to be systematic and cumulative. It has to be built on previous work. That's why before we do any research, we need to do a literature review. We read all the previous research has been published that's studying the same topic or use similar method, so we can learn from other people's mistake. And when we do research, nothing is ever proven with science. We just become more confident as we learn more. Essentially, it's a process of gathering evidence in the objective and empirical way, instead of prove something is true or prove something not true. The reason we say that nothing is ever proven is because we believe there will be new information out there. We acknowledge our limitation, that we don't know everything yet. But to our best knowledge, we believe those evidence support certain claim instead of others. Of course, when we're doing research, the goal is to develop theory. I don't know if you have ever taken media theory class, but cultivation, agenda setting, theory of reason action, those are the common theory that you probably will learn in communication classes. We don't have laws like statements of fact in social science, but if you take class in physics, you probably learn a lot of laws. But just so you know, we don't have those. And science should also be predictive. We want to predict what will happen in the future, so we learn something and we can plan our behavior better. And of course, science also attempts to explain what's going on and describe what's going on, and also explore. Like doctors do that all the time to explore new treatment. The best part is science is also self-correcting. If we have bad results and if we have made some mistake in the data collection process. Most likely, other scholar reading the paper will find that out. So that's all the 6 characteristics of scientific method. I hope you learned something today.